Madera, a typical Central California agricultural town of about 30,000 residents. Its population and activity rises and falls with the harvesting of its crops. But its day-to-day business is conducted at a leisure pace. The local roads and Interstate 99, which runs through the center of town, are uncrowded. Yes, Madera, California is a small, beautiful, quiet, peaceful town in the San Joaquin Valley, except when the Warbirds arrive. This is the 13th Annual Gathering of Warbirds, sponsored by the Fresno chapter of the Air Force Association, a non-profit organization. Residents of Madera and nearby Fresno enthusiastically welcome you to this panorama of World War II training and combat aircraft. The Madera Airport Complex is an ideal facility with its long, clear approaches, open areas for acrobatics, and large ramps for displays. When you first arrive at the airport, you're overwhelmed by the vast numbers of beautifully restored aircraft, carefully displayed for your inspection. These aircraft fly in from all over the United States for this special weekend. They range from small liaison aircraft to large Mitchell and Invader bombers. There's even a Curtiss Commando C-46, painstakingly restored, complete with Chinese markings, reminiscent of the days when such aircraft were making daily runs over the hump in Burma. Highly polished Vultee B-13s vie for attention, with the Grumman Avenger torpedo bomber. And the B-25s displaying skillfully reproduced artwork to capture the authentic look of 40 years ago. The Madera Static Display Area is a photographer's dream. But not all warbirds are large, menacing, gun-bristling monsters. The small aircraft also served with pride. Many battles would not have been won without the role played by the grasshoppers. The armed services called them all grasshoppers, but in fact, they were hastily converted civilian planes built by Piper, Aranca, Taylorcraft, Beechcraft, Stinson, and Fiesler-Storch. These small, unarmed, underpowered aircraft flew the mail, carried the wounded, and spotted artillery. Their ability to land on short, undeveloped strips and dirt roads made them an invaluable aid to the military on both sides. This is the German-built Fiesler-Storch with superb STOL characteristics. Even by today's standards, the Storch literally can land in its own length. Harold Kinsvater has the only ambulance model Fiesler-Storch in the world.
This is a 1944 Fiesler FI 156D model Storch, built in 1944. It has an original Argus A10C engine with a Luftwaffe hop-up kit. It puts out 270 horsepower. Just completed it 2 months ago, and I haven't had time to get it painted yet. I'm going to paint it in the winter camouflage. Now, this D model is an ambulance, and as of right now, it's the only flying example in the world, the D model. The history on this thing, it was built by Morin Saunier in France, occupied France for the Germans, and there's about 20% of German-built parts in this particular aircraft. This will support the Red Cross insignia, and all the straps and leather straps are original inside, all original equipment just except for a couple of gauges, and I'll have them done in German. The aircraft will land in about 61 feet at sea level with no wind involved, and top speed's 109 miles per hour. It landed 61 feet, and I've landed this thing in about 10 feet here yesterday. That's all I have to say about this amazing aircraft.
But the most popular warbird, without a doubt, is the North American AT-6. Over 15,000 were built by North American in the U.S. and by Norden in Canada as the Harvard. Also known as the Texan, this fine aircraft was operated by over 40 countries as a fighter, fighter trainer, instrument trainer, target tow plane, camera platform, and one Texan even has a submarine kill to its credit. Hundreds of these reliable planes were called back into service during the Korean conflict. North American quickly converted them to the G model so they could be used as aircraft spotters. This sturdy Texan would fly in low and mark the locations of suspected installations with one of its 12 smoke rockets for easy spotting by the fighter bombers. Let's watch Jim Modes of the Condor Squadron in Los Angeles demonstrate the aerial agility of the T-6. Texans are still being used today for sky typing, racing, and some even doubled as Zeros in movies such as Tora Tora and Baa Black Sheep. They remain one of the few affordable, fun-flying warbirds left. The fact that there are such a large number of Texans still flying is a tribute to the unbeatable combination of top-quality components made by North American, Pratt & Whitney, and Hamilton Standard. Eventually, the venerable Texan no longer met the criteria set forth by the armed forces, so the North American T-28 Trojan was born. The Air Force used the A model with its distinctive sounding 7-cylinder Wright engine and 2-bladed paddle prop. The Navy wanted more power, so they ordered the B and C models with the larger 9-cylinder engine and the 3-bladed prop. The Navy used their T-28s for many years and only recently passed them on to civilian owners. The Beechcraft factory was also busy building a small trainer for the armed forces, the T-34 Minter. The Minter used many stock parts from Beechcraft's popular Bonanza and Debonair series of personal aircraft. Throughout the years, many T-34s found their way into civilian hands through CAP squadrons, and some through direct purchases from the services. Recently, the Navy has been testing a turboprop version, which it designated the T-34C. Beech Minters are affordable, fun to fly, and very aerobatic. While grasshoppers are inexpensive, fun to fly, and deserve their popularity as easy to own and maintain warbirds,
5 rides and perhaps more.
the crowd came to Madera this weekend to see fighters. And fighters they would see in the form of meticulously restored Mustangs and magnificent Hawker Sea Furies. North American produced the first Mustang for the British in just 117 days. Eventually, over 14,000 Mustangs were made.
There goes the regular. I'm done, maybe which one? This is? Well, oh, that's the portrait. Completely flyby Mustangs, rectified them, and we have a beautiful package.
In 1944, a United States Senate committee called the Mustang the most aerodynamically perfect pursuit plane in existence.
Right off the end of the runway, stick back again. Correct for a little block there. See it put a little right back.
The Hawker Factory, proud producer of the aircraft hero of the Battle of Britain, the Hurricane, and later the Typhoon, also produced these magnificent Sea Furies. Sporting distinctive five-bladed props, the Sea Fury ended the reign of the piston engine fighter, although they continued to be used by the British and Australian navies for many years. Ellsworth Getchell from San Jose, California, discusses his Sea Fury.
Well, we have about 4 or 5 Sea Furies, as you can see down the line. They're all vintage of about 1949 to 1951. And this particular airplane in back of me is the one I'm associated with. And it's a 1951 Hawker Sea Fury Mark 11. It has a Bristol Centaurus 18A power plant in it. It's 3,270 cubic inches in size, and it puts out 2,600 takeoff horsepower. And the Sea Fury is the fastest piston-driven fighter ever built by any country at 464 miles per hour. And that would be a stock airplane off the assembly line. They built 864 airplanes from 1949 to 1951. And this particular airplane was built in 1951, and it's originally flown by the Australian Royal Navy from 1951 to 1961. And she went around the Reno air races in 1967 one time, and I managed to get the airplane back in 1974, and I've got about 10 years of my life into it, trying to restore it to its original condition.
England had its share of other fighter aircraft, including the illustrious Spitfire. This variation is the Mark 9T, designed for training with its unique additional cockpit and canopy. Supermarine Company produced over 20,000 Spits, a lasting tribute to the design genius of Reginald Mitchell. At the outbreak of hostilities with Japan, the United States had quantities of two fighters, the Curtiss Warhawk and the Bell Aero Cobra. The P-40s were in use by the Flying Tigers, an American volunteer group flying with the Chinese Air Force. It was there that the distinctive shark's teeth design was first incorporated into the paint scheme. This Curtiss P-40 Warhawk is being flown by Eric Mingeldorf. This Bell here at Madera is a P-63 King Cobra. 3,500 King Cobras were shipped to Russia and the Free French. The Chance Vought Corsair, with its distinctive bent wing, needs no introduction to most aviation buffs. They recognize it as the aircraft featured in the Baa Black Sheep TV series. The Corsair was delivered to the Navy in June of 1942, and at that time was the most powerful Navy fighter ever built. The Corsair was also the last piston engine fighter produced for the U.S. military. There were over 12,000 Corsairs manufactured by Chance Vought, Goodyear, and Brewster. The Japanese nicknamed the Corsair Whistling Death because of the eerie sound it made as it dove at high speeds to attack enemy aircraft. Corsair pilots downed at least 2,000 enemy aircraft by VJ Day. Let's watch as Howard Pardue demonstrates some of the aerobatics used by the military in combat with this beautifully restored FG-1. Delivery to the military of the Fork-tailed Devil, the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, began in August of 1941. The Lightning destroyed more Japanese aircraft in the South Pacific than any other American airplane. Let's watch and admire the only P-38 aerobatic demonstration in the world, superbly performed by Lefty Gardner of Mercedes, Texas.
Ladies and gentlemen, an airplane doesn't like to fly straight and level like that, but you're going to see this P-38. Watch him now as he turns it to knife-edge flight, climbing to get a little altitude. A classic silhouette of the P-38. There he goes, up into the... Up into... Getting into position. There he is, rolling it. Another roll. Over the top. Look at it, straight up into the sky.
Here, Lefty Gardner of the Confederate Air Force tells us about his spectacular Lockheed P-38 Lightning.
We're looking at a World War II P-38 built by Lockheed, which was one of the premier fighter planes of World War II. This airplane is an L model, which is one of the last versions. However, it looks more like the E model because we've made conversions on the nose cowling. We did away with the chin cowling and made it look like one of the earlier versions because it's a little bit faster in this configuration. This airplane had a very illustrious military history during World War II. It was sent to Europe and compete against the 109s and the 190s the Germans had, and it did very poorly the first couple of years because the early model P-38s didn't have dive brakes and they didn't have intercoolers. Consequently, at high altitude, the oil in the engine would freeze up and congeal, and the engine would run dry and it would seize and quit. And also, in a dive after a Messerschmitt, this airplane would tend to hit compressibility and slide right on by the 109s and therefore become very vulnerable to it because it had no dive brakes or no way to slow down the speed in a dive. So the General Eisenhower ordered all the P-38s to be sent to the South Pacific because they weren't competing well against the German airplanes. However, shortly after that, Lockheed came out with modifications, and the K models were modified in the field with the dive brakes and the intercoolers, and the L models like this one came out from the factory with that version, and they competed very well against the Germans. In fact, I believe the kill ratio was about 12-to-1 in the latter stages of combat. However, they'd been ordered out of the European theater and were going to the South Pacific by this time. And of course, in the South Pacific, you know what happened there. Major Bong was a top American ace with 40 kills in a P-38, and McGuire had something like close to that. I forgot the exact number. But anyhow, they did very well against the Japanese in that they had a very high climb speed and rate, and they could dive and could outdo the Japanese Zero very well if handled properly. However, they didn't do well in a Lufberry circle, and so they had to avoid those kind of maneuvers. This airplane here came out of the military and went to a place in Houston that was owned by J.D. Reed Company, and they modified it for racing. It has no tricks, no bad tendencies, as long as both engines are running. However, whenever that one engine quits, you're in trouble unless you react and do the right thing right off, especially takeoff or anytime you're at minimum speed and lose an engine. It's very critical, because both of these engines are, in a technical term, called critical engines, because they rotate the wrong direction to help maintain level flight when the other one quits. Actually, they had so much trouble in the prototype stage with this, trying to work out vibration and tail flutter problems, that they tried a number of engine versions. They tried the Merlin, they tried 2 right-hand engines on this airplane, they tried 2 lefts, they tried a right and left opposite of what they are now, which would have been the logical installation, but they got too much flutter and too much vibration out of all those configurations, and so they finally settled on this version where the props turn like this, which is the wrong way, actually. So the airplane makes the airplane fly with no torque, and you can do maneuvers much slower than you can with a single-engine airplane. And it has a nose gear and the wide main gear, which makes it awfully easy to land and handle on the ground. And it's just a real pleasure to fly.
When the close of World War II marked the end of aerial fighting, the United States knew that a different type of fighter-bomber would be needed for future campaigns. It was then that Douglas Aircraft Corporation tested and produced the world's largest single-engine, single-passenger fighter-bomber, the AD-4 Skyraider, nicknamed the SPAD during the Vietnam conflict. Jack Spanich of Livonia, Michigan discusses his AD-4 Skyraider.
Hello, this is a Douglas Skyraider behind me. It's a model AD-4NA. This particular aircraft was built in 1952 by Douglas in El Segundo, California. It entered the Navy in the late part of 1946 and served with the Navy through 1968. At that time, it saw combat both in Korea and Vietnam. The U.S. Air Force took over operations in late '68, operated through 1975 in Vietnam. This particular aircraft is painted and marked up for an aircraft that served in NKP in Vietnam. The aircraft has 12 5-inch high-velocity rockets, 2 1,000-pound bombs. The center section has a 300-gallon fuel tank, which can also either carry a fuel tank or a 2,000-pound bomb or any type of ordnance up to the weight of 2,000 pounds.
The airplane has a useful load of 10 to 12,000 pounds, which surpasses the bomb load of a World War II B-17. Performance-wise, the airplane will, since it was a carrier-built plane originally, has a 65-knot stalling speed and a top speed of 315 knots. Particular airplane, as you see it, would be used for ground support in Vietnam with the 420mm cannons, which have a fire rate of 700 rounds per minute, and the hard points on the wings and the undersection, which would carry either the rockets or napalm. They would be used for ground support or attacks on moving convoys. Also, it was used for protection for the helicopters that went into Vietnam to rescue downed flyers and airmen. This aircraft has the capability of staying on station for up to 10 hours.
The 13th annual Madera Airshow's theme is the Year of the Bomber, and no other bomber gained more fame so early in World War II than North American's Billy Mitchell B-25 light attack bomber. On April 18, 1942, at 8:20 a.m. ship's log time, a 16-plane flight of B-25s took off from the U.S. aircraft carrier Hornet on its historic flight to Tokyo, with all 16 B-25s departing successfully. Ted Lawson, waiting his turn in his B-25, the Ruptured Duck, describes Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle's takeoff as follows. With full flaps, motors at full throttle, and his left wing far out over the port side of the Hornet, Doolittle's plane waddled and then lunged slowly into the teeth of the gale that swept down the deck. His left wheel stuck on the white line as if it were on a track. Doolittle picked up more speed and held to his line. And just as the Hornet lifted up on top of a wave and cut through it at full speed, Doolittle's plane took off. He had yards to spare. He hung his ship almost straight up on its props until we could see the whole top of the B-25. Then he leveled off, and I watched him come around in a tight circle and shoot low over our heads, straight down the line, painted on the deck. The rest of this flight is history, and Doolittle's flight went on to bomb Tokyo and other major cities on the Japanese mainland. Many authorities on these matters attribute the high level of morale in the United States to this single event, which transpired early in the war. B-25 with its 75mm cannon, 14 50 caliber machine guns, and provisions for a torpedo or 3,200 pounds of bombs holds the distinction of being, at that time, the most heavily armed aircraft in the world. As part of Madera's Year of the Bomber, also participating were a Grumman Avenger torpedo bomber. A Curtiss C-46. Plus a Beechcraft AT-11 bomber trainer. A Grumman S-2 tracker also takes part in the massive flyby. The Warbird fans who gathered in Madera on this weekend were indeed privileged to see such an awesome number of authentic Warbirds. We all owe a debt of gratitude to the many owners and pilots who have given with unselfish devotion the millions of dollars and countless hours of their time to preserve these irreplaceable mementos of our aviation history. As these magnificent Warbirds taxi back to the tie-downs in preparation for their long flight home, we can see the look of appreciation on the faces of the spectators.
Today. When he's pulling it up right now,
Yes, Madera, California is returning to its peaceful country town status until next summer, when the 14th Annual Gathering of Warbirds will take place. See you there.